hope everyone had a beautiful Hanukkah. We have the honor and the pleasure to have Rebbe Miriam Yerushalmi again with us tonight. Yerushalmi is going to speak about the Parsha VAYIGASH, humility with dignity. Thank you so much. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, you know, when I was saying humility with dignity, I was thinking also dignity with humility. So, so much to be learned, every Parsha, and this week's Parsha, it's so fascinating to see how both heroes, both Yosef, Hatzadik, and Yehuda, stepping up to the plate and really with dignity and with strength and with bravery, but also in a way, even in his strong way of trying to save his brother's life, and actually does misras nefesh, self-sacrifice, saying basically, take me instead of my brother. I promised my father nothing would happen to this boy. And as we know, Yosef, he was really trying out and testing his brothers to see, are they going to really do tshuva? Not because he needed the tshuva, not because he needed to take any kind of revenge if they didn't, but because he loved them so much, and because he understood that everything that happened to him was by divine plan, by Hashem's messenger, so that he would be able to save his brothers and whole family. Yosef could have been taking a different route. He could have had a broken heart. He could have felt revenge. He actually didn't, which is mind-blowing. I mean, if we really think about it, something so harsh and so terrible that they had done to him. They had plotted to kill him, and then they decided to not have blood on their hands, and then to sell him. And yet he was able to clear his heart. That is a tzaddik that he was, and not only forgave them, but gave them the choices of land and the choices of everything, and made them feel like they didn't have to carry the guilt the rest of their lives by actually telling him, you know, don't worry, you know, this happened because Hashem made it happen. So that the unity and the brotherhood could resume again. Think about it for a moment. What humbleness, what humility. That takes a real perspective, the godly perspective, to see the whole picture from a panoramic view, to be able to let go, knowing that it was God behind everything that happened to him. We see in many different stories in different parshas where, going back in time when Yaakov actually cried almost on, and fell almost on the shoulder of Rachel. What did Yaakov want to portray at that moment? Some say he knew in prophecy that they wouldn't be buried together, and he was crying. Deeper Mefarshim say, and this is I learned from Tanya, that he was implanting in the DNA of every soul to weep for anyone instead of feel hatred. Meaning, have compassion, have a feeling of sensitivity towards someone who may be lost, astray, even acting in a not so good way. This also took place when Rivka told her son, go dress up like Esau, put on his coat, go get the blessing. Why did she do that? She did it also to then enable that when someone is going to be acting like an Esau, from the pasuk Yadayim shel Esav Barakol Yaakov, meaning on the outside, the person is Esav-like, not behaving nicely. Please, please remember that there is a Kol Yaakov, the neshama. The voice of Yaakov represents the neshama that is deep inside that person, even though on the outside they are acting in an undignified and even, in a way that's even, God forbid, hurtful. That you should sense and feel the source of their soul that's buried, so that you can be humble before them. In Tanya, it actually teaches us that when we are humble, when we realize that everything that's happening to us is from Hashem, when we realize that the person that's doing what they're doing is from Hashem, then we can have that state of humility. We can have that state of not feeling bothered, broken, not feeling anger or worse at the person who's just the messenger. We can learn this example from Yosef, because Yosef behaved toward his brothers in such a magnanimous way. He didn't seek the revenge against the people that caused him such distress and damage. And here's the key point here, that we can actually, and are requested from Hashem even, to repay even the guilty offender with kindness. So one would ask, how can you even think of such a thing? How could you even ask of such a thing? That, okay, maybe I can forgive, but to actually do good to the person that did something not good to me and worse than not good? So we know ultimately everything stems from Hashem. So if this is the agent of Hashem that decreed that this should happen, and since everything that Hashem does is for the good, then you can actually repay the person that brought this quote-unquote good and return even kindness to them. How many times we find ourselves in a situation and it's beyond jolting, beyond unfathomable. Our mind just, can't seem to wrap around what just happened. And we almost have to get mind blind and not see with our eyes what just happened. And I was actually reading in this book called Inner Peace by Rabbi Yisrael Roll. And when I was thinking about this and how we enter the shul and the synagogue, there's a statement that says, a man should always enter 2 doors into the synagogue. What is the meaning of these 2 doors? Say the distance of 2 doors and then pray? Well, the Shulchan Aruch explains that these 2 doorways, when you have an image of going into one doorway and then you go to another door, through another doorway, and then you actually get into the shul, right? So, but this is a mental doorway, so that we slow down before we go into shul, so that we should not rush to daven as soon as possible. The person should pause the amount of time it would take to walk through these 2 doorways, so that his mind will be quieted, to enable him to daven with kavanah. For if he begins davening as soon as he enters, suddenly his mind will not be able to focus, it won't be calm, it's a bit, challenging. So, what does the Maharal of Nevi Nesevas Alam say? That these 2 doors mean that you have to, quiet your mind. You have these 2 mental doorways, like a 2-level thought. One is to quiet your mind and removing the outside influences and distractions. And the second doorway is now to prepare yourself to connect with Hashem. So as I was reading this, I was thinking, wow, you know, when things happen to us, if we could just take that step back, right? In the Amida, before you're about to connect to Hashem, you take that step back and prepare yourself to really to connect with Hashem. The same thing. It's like when you're about to experience an interaction with someone, especially when they have just did something that was kind of surprisingly not expected, that instead of racing to respond, like to have that mental picture of I need to go through these two doorways before I can really respond correctly, properly, with humility, with dignity. Knowing that the person is an agent of Hashem, knowing that it's a test from Hashem, knowing that the way you respond could put, as it were, gasoline in an already burning, fiery situation, or taking that time to really think it through could save the situation and the relationship. There's a pasuk that comes from the Torah, and it says, "Liyaakov asher pada es Avram," and this pasuk actually is in relationship to, and I'll explain in English that that what happened was God when Abraham was dealing with the four kings, Hashem looked into the future and said, "Wow, Yaakov, because of Yaakov, you have such a you have an amazing son, and you also have a amazing grandson, and in all that merit, I'm going to save you from this disastrous situation of warring with four kings," and he won. So that's like the line that the Midrash explains of Yaakov actually, because of Yaakov, Abraham actually merited being saved. But the Zohar goes and teaches something deeper about this sentence, and it speaks about the spiritual character traits that each of our forefather represents. So that when it says Yaakov, if you have the spiritual character trait of compassion, then you have the ability to actually redeem the Avraham, which Avraham represents the love of Hashem, this buried soul that behaved not so nicely to you, this blocked person that is really causing you some problems in your life, or maybe it's your own child and they're not developing spiritually like you want, or even like basic menschlichkeit, for everything that you did for them almost can make you cry and like be so devastating to you. So when you take on the trait, the humble trait, the compassionate trait of like, I feel bad for them. They're stuck. They're like if a stuck puppy is under a car, you don't step on the car, or sit on the car hood. You realize this is a stuck puppy. So the compassion you have them for being stuck takes a level of humbleness. Like that. And that has the power to redeem the soul that's buried, that's behaving in a way that's unbecoming. So we have in our Torah teachings of how powerful, this level of humbleness and humility and having all this beautiful character traits that enable the person who's stuck to actually be redeemed and not only that, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya actually teaches it, that it also redeems, it kind of brings out your love for the person that up to now, was kind of buried because you're so hurt, and you could be blocking yourself and not being the lamplighter and the example, and you might be distancing yourself because of the disappointment and the hurt. Easier said than done, but the more we realize the way in which we behave, even the way we think about them, even if we're acting on the outside cool and collective and we're not revengeful, but maybe we're not going the extra mile for them. Maybe we're, our thoughts are blocking the connection. There's another pasuk in Ashrei where it says, Potech et yadecha umatzbiah l'chol chai ratzon. And here's another beautiful place where although it does talk about Hashem opens his hands and he gives sustenance to everyone, but the yud in yadecha, which is the yud that's in the word hands, also represents the yud of God's wisdom. So when we lift up our hands and we're saying, God, open up your hands, but we're also saying, God, open up the channels so that your wisdom can flow and sustain not only the person, economically, so that they can have a sustenance, but that the Hashem's wisdom will flow into their heart, into their mind, to give them the sustenance so that they can become redeemed, so that they can become freer to, use these soul powers of theirs to do right by you. But really for their sake. It'd be nice for your sake too, but really, a humble person that has that level of emes, like a truth about them, that they want every soul to be close to Hashem. As the Tanya teaches us, it's one thing, and it's a good level to want yourself to be close to Hashem, but because you love Hashem so much, you want everyone to be close to Hashem. And that brings you even more delight than you just being close to Hashem. The opposite of humility is arrogance. How dare they? I don't deserve this. What chutzpah? Like looking down at them, being above them, and that actually causes disunity, and that's the actual component that will cause the person to even more fall prey to continuing in being that force that is not pleasant in your relationship with them. That blocks them more. So we see there was a story in this book called Positivity Bias by Mendel Kalmanson, and there was a moment in time when the Rebbe had a serious heart attack, and he was seeing a doctor, and as the doctor was drawing his blood during the treatment, the Rebbe asked, what is it that draws the blood from the veins? The needle itself or the vacuum of the syringe? And the doctor answered that it was the vacuum. So the Rebbe then responded, it reminded him of a troubled person who once came to him thinking that he was lowly, he was empty inside, and he was a good for nothing. And the Rebbe actually told them, in fact, that's the opposite. That when you're an empty vessel, when you feel humble, when you feel the opposite of arrogant, it could really draw within you such a greater intensity of godly powers and godly energies that, the beautiful neshama that you are can actually become even more pronounced and more developed, and all your character traits could be even, exposed with even greater intensity because of that humility. And if you had to err between humility and arrogance, where humility on the extreme case where you feel like a nobody and depressed or bitter, versus arrogance, definitely cultivating more humility really is the key to being so powerful, the way Yosef led the way. There's also a story in Parsha Noach when the flood was happening, and actually Noach got bit by the lion. I don't know if we had spoken about this, but like the Rebbe actually said that had he looked out the window, and yes, he got bit, like he would realize that, look at the bigger picture here. You're being saved, like at least you're not out there, drowning. So sometimes like incidences happen in our life, and we have to really compare it to really the grander good that's really around us, instead of zoning in on that one thing that happened to us. And that's the whole message of the fat cows being swallowed up by the skinny cows. There's like a lot of fatness in your life, and like you're actually allowing this faculty of imagination to swallow up all your good. And that happens also between people. Yes, something happened, a person failed you or disappointed you, and like it almost seems like there's no path to return, to even have that connection to that person anymore. But if you look at all the overall picture of all that they did for you over the years and all the good, so they had a little bit of a setback. They didn't, keep to the standard that you minimally wanted them to keep in your relationship. But that the more we look outside and look at the bigger picture of all the blessings in our life, even with this one person, then with humility, we can interact with the people in our lives and realize, everything in life is like an undeserved gift. And anything and everything someone does and has done for you is like, a bonus plus. And so when we see and interact with people in this way, not only does it affect our neshama, but it also keeps them with a greater wherewithal to grow and become more of their true selves. I was reading in this book also by Rabbi Ginsburg, Body, Mind, and Soul, and the power of having this humility, and in the Sphira it's called Hod. It's like, it's a humbleness, it's like the ability to really acknowledge all the good in your life, to be not a demanding and with high expectations that people, need to cater to every whim of your needs. And the more a person cultivates this humility, this actually increases your immune system and has the power to fight off disease. So let's a little bit look into this immune system. It's in modern terminology these days, they call it psychoneuroimmunology. Like, because of your psychological well-being, if you're bitter and you're demanding and you're disappointed and it's like this this tension of like, life is not fair, they should have, they could have. It's just like this energy of toxicity and very acidic. When your mind, as I remember reading a pasuk that said, and it was from a Tehillim, but the Rebbe pointed out this pasuk that a broad-minded person is always celebrating. What is a broad-minded person? They think everything is a gift. They have very little expectations. Whatever they're getting, they're just like blown away and joyful for the little they have. Like, remember someone said, go to Reb Zusha, see how ask him. He's the one who's been suffering. This man asked, how do I cope with suffering? So he says, go to Rav Zusha. And then Rav Zusha says, what? I'm not suffering. And he was suffering a terrible disease. He didn't have even like a bed. He had stones and not even a table or chair. So much suffering. But he was like, he saw everything that he had was so precious and such a gift from Hashem, an undeserved gift, that, that's the broad-minded person constantly celebrating. And it takes humility. It's a humbleness that I don't. Who am I to deserve more? Who am I to expect that from them, or what? But even from just a perspective of sound, not only mind, because when you have a sound mind like that and a healthy mindset, then your body follows suit. So to have a healthy immune system, it's like if you're in the habit of constantly feeling thankful and grateful, which the more humble you are, the more you're grateful for everything, then your body knows how to acknowledge a good thing. Wow, this is good, and this is good, and thank you Hashem for that, and thank you Hashem for that. Okay, so like they're not a perfect friend, and yeah, they did, but you know what? Like, I'm so thankful for the good that they, and I see the good, and I constantly try to steer my mind, and my new, 2 words is mind blind. Like, I want to keep my mind from seeing everything, and just focus on the good, the way Yosef did. He could have been bitter of everything that he went through. He didn't. So when you have that mindset, then your body follows your head. So your body knows, oh, this is good. This is a good bacteria, and this is a good bacteria, and this is good. So how come, and how does the body, and why does the body need to know when something is good? So then it can differentiate between an invader. When you constantly know what's good in your life, then you constantly only will keep the good in your body. Meaning so then the body will naturally and organically fight off the invaders. Do you hear what I'm saying? Isn't that fascinating? I was like blown away when I learned this. Because there are some immune systems that turn against the body. And they accept a bad and thinking it's good. So the inner experience of this humbleness, this sincerity, this humility, the more you acknowledge and the more you thank Hashem that everything is from Hashem, and you see the good in everything, and you have a sense of thanks for all the benevolence that's in your life, and you feel like almost indebted to other people for whatever good they give you, also the spiritual gifts they give you. I always say to people, like especially young children who are dealing with teachers that are obnoxious, honestly, like they should not be teachers. And I say until the situation resolves, until whatever, if you're going to be in a different school, but this is a learning lesson because you can see what you don't want to be. And it's a gift, that you're experiencing this not good in another. You're experiencing what it feels like to be arrogant, and without this humility, without this compassion, look what gift that is for you, that you're going to be able to more be driven to be not like them. And I always say, celebrate you, So even when things are a bit complicated and not so pleasant like you would want them to be, there's always some good, there's always some silver lining that we can acknowledge and be thankful for. And praise Hashem for the learning lesson, and work at a place of having such a strength even in the midst of the challenge. So so we see that, can you imagine like how many people have weak immune systems? This is like a secret to longevity and health. You know, one thing is connected to another, and in such a unbelievable format of almost like a prescription. You know, you wanna have maximum potential to fight off disease. You have humility, and with humility you have dignity, because in that state of being humble in front of someone, you know, you show that you're wise and a God-fearing person. In the letters of the Ramban, which he writes a letter to his son, and beautiful, I highly recommend everyone should read it every week. It's like a few pages, and then there's this Rabbi Foyer who actually translated each sentence into like 2 or 3 explanation pages of how to implement it in your life. And one of the pages said that, you know, about, you know, dealing with, you know, not being angry when people behave, you know, improperly to you. So he says that the wise person, he speaks softly, humbly, because he doesn't need the force of his words to win the conversation. Someone insecure, someone, you know, with little das, with little knowledge, with little understanding that God is putting them through this test, will need to like prove his point and raise his voice, and everyone can see he's not a dignified person when he loses his temper. A wise person reaches the level of humility, realizing that everything is from Hashem, and what do I expect? I don't expect anything from anybody. It's a very freeing way to live. It's like Mashiach now, I say. You know, it's very geuludic to cut the unhealthy ties that your psyche has in your relationship to other people. There's even a pasuk that says, and I find women more bitter than death. And most women, especially out there, will be, what? Are you kidding? If anything, it should be the opposite. Like, you know, because men tend to be gevordik. Men tend to, you know, be more, sometimes way more than women. And so the pasuk teaches us that when the I find a woman, I found this woman because I want her to do this for me, and I want her to do that for me, and I want that, and I. It's like a very self-serving relationship. You have a zillion expectations, and the I will get in the way. And then she'll be bitter, and she'll be hurt, she'll cave in, and maybe be distant, or even worse, you know, start throwing the gasoline on the burning fire because she's so hurt and so rejected. So that ego that's in the way, oh my gosh, can cause any relationship to go south. But the other pasuk, Matzah Isha Matzah Tov, this pasuk which says, Matzah, I found a wife, and I found good, but the ani, is not in the picture. Matzah Isha. There's no I. It's not about me. It's not, I want to get married because I want someone to do this, this, and this for me. Matzah Tov. Then you find good, because your I isn't part of the equation of the relationship. It's because God commanded us to get married. God commanded us to be helpful to our soulmate. God commanded us to be like God and to be giving. So the more humility, as Yosef, you see, he rose to power from being in prison to being in this highest of position. He always said, even when he was interpreting the dream, it's not me that's interpreting it. God helped me interpret the dream. You put God into your life, and in fact, so much so, Yosef could have gotten very revengeful for those two people that were testifying against him. The butler and the butcher testified against him. And there they were, very, troubled. And he approached them. And he said, wow, I see your trouble. How can I help you? Imagine like you're sitting in, God forbid, not you, but someone's sitting in jail with the two perpetrators that pointed and had a testimony against you, and because of them you're in jail, and you care a hoot of that they're not feeling good today and look sad. But he rose to the occasion. He did care, and because of that, he was able to help them interpret their dreams, and because of that, led to that interpretation to be remembered, so that when Pharaoh needed interpretation, this Sarah Mashke, the wine bearer, actually remembered Yosef, told Pharaoh, and then got Yosef out of jail. We see, again, in humility, he helped, and then he became a dignified powerhouse, second in command to Pharaoh. And it's unbelievable. And had I not read with my own eyes that the Rebbe said, not only can we reach the level of Yosef Hatzadik to do good for those who have not done good by us, that we must. Like it's going to bring Mashiach. And just like there was baseless hatred, now we have to have baseless love. How much more so, with challenging people in our lives, that if we can just muster up a little bit of extra kindness, and repair and heal and forgive, and you don't have to have them in your life, and you don't even have to go out and see them, but just in your mind, to release that prisoner within you that's not good for you, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, because you let go. And you understand whatever happened, whether it's your childhood relationships with your parents, with whoever, or the relationships that you had in the past that may be still like in your heart. You know how many people as a counselor that are 70 and 80, they're still in tears calling me and crying, meeting me, and of what happened in their relationships with their parents, or with their this or their sister, and they're just carrying it. And they're in prison. This helps redeem the person also, yourself, and it helps redeem them, and it really, Baruch Hashem, brings Mashiach. Please God, we need it already. Tefach miyad mamish. So I hope the words from my heart inspire you to just reach a new level of humility with dignity.
Amen. Thank you so much, Everett. It was so beautiful. Can we open the floor for Q&A?
Yes.
We have another few minutes left.
Yes.
Thank you. Yerushalmi?
Yes, I'm gonna.
A few minutes for Q&A.
Yes, I do. I'm just gonna. So I'm gonna make it private. So I'm gonna stop the recording here.
Okay. Yes.